America's losing to China. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chang, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. What do you think? Is America losing to China? Think of all the ways China has infiltrated America's culture and government. And then think of all the ways that at the same time China's doing that, the Communist Party is also infiltrating governments around the world, forcing them into some sort of financial reliance on the CCP. Let's hope Joe Biden doesn't sell America completely down the river to China before he leaves the White House. Before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention that if you like Bold and Blunt, you can get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com. Just scroll to the newsletter section at the bottom of the page, click on it, find my name, and subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays in time for the lunch hour. It contains all my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, arming you with the truths you need to fight the liars on the left, and there are many liars on the left, mind you. And it also contains my twice weekly Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcast. You can also get Bold and Blunt at edify.app. That is the fantastic online platform for faith-based podcasts. You got to check it out. Not only is Bold and Blunt featured there, for which I'm very thankful, but there's a whole host of other faith-based podcasts that you can check out, that you can download, that you can listen to. And listen, who doesn't need a little faith in these Joe Biden White House times, right? Especially after listening to the warnings that this show contains about China. So China in America, China beating America. What are the chances, you think? The long game. This is a headline at Brookings, hardly a conservative right-wing outlet. Brookings, the long game, China's grand strategy to displace American order. That was August 2021. Yeah, China's out there. Yeah, China's coming on strong, and China doesn't need an overnight win. China is quite content with playing the long game, as this headline suggests. If it takes a generation or longer, so be it, the communists say. So be it, so long as in the end, China is the leader on the global stage, and America is somewhere down below, some third world country struggling to survive. China is beating the U.S. in the battle for influence in Asia, originally published in the New York Times in June of 2022. Let's read a little bit from this piece. President Biden has said the United States won't stand by and let China, quote, win the 21st century, end quote. And his first trip to Asia was meant to match words with action. Really? Really, Joe Biden? Really, Joe Biden? Father of the Hunter Biden? Father of the Hunter Biden? Who sells artwork that a 4-year-old could draw, but crayons in the hands of Hunter Biden suddenly produce artwork that sells for $50,000 or so. And that's lowballing it. Listen to this from The Guardian. No, from the Daily Mail, excuse me. Obama's ethics chief. That was Barack Obama's ethics chief, says Hunter Biden's, quote, shameful and grifty, end quote, plan to sell his art to anonymous buyers for up to $500,000. Forget $50,000, $500,000 could let foreign governments funnel money to the first family in secret. That was penned in June of 2021. And look, it's not exactly as if Hunter Biden is this squeaky clean dude, right? I mean, he's got a past. He's got a past and a president. And a president. Whoa. Talk about a Freudian slip. Did you see what I said there? And a president. How true is that? Art dealers have already noted, the Daily Mail writes, that Biden is likely profiting off his father's name, given the staggering price of his artwork, with one saying his art would more likely sell for as much as $100,000 if he wasn't a Biden. Isn't that interesting? It has raised questions that buyers with nefarious interests could potentially pay for the pieces to try to get access to President Biden through his son. Whoa, perish the thought, right? All sales, I'm reading again from Daily Mail, all sales of Biden's artwork will be kept confidential. Here's the underscore part. Despite his alleged corruption over prior business deals in Ukraine and China. And yet, President Biden, again quoting from this New York Times piece, has said the United States won't stand by and let China, quote, win the 21st century, end quote. Well, of course they're not standing idly by. They're actually enabling China. They're helping China. They're not standing idly by. Standing idly by on China for this administration would be an improvement. It would actually help America. Because as it stands now, this White House has just opened arms to China. Come on in, guys. Take over America. Look, my guest today, Gordon Chang, you've heard of him. He lived and worked in China and Hong Kong for almost 2 decades, and he is the author of several books, commentaries, pamphlets, and so forth, the latest title of which is called The Great U.S.-China Tech War, a booklet released by Encounter Books. He's also an attorney and a frequent media guest. He's basically the go-to guy for the media when you want truths on China and you don't want to sugarcoat the perils of communist China to America. And what's interesting is that he's also appeared as an expert in this new documentary, Innovation Race. Gordon, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. I really appreciate being on Bold and Blunt.
Excellent. So we're talking today about something that is so under the radar, but so crucial to American freedoms, patent law. What's going on with patent technology law and China?
Well, China is plundering our technology, and it's doing it in a number of different ways. And it's not just the outright criminality of stealing our stuff. They've also been taking advantage of our patent laws. One of the things that the Biden administration has been trying to do, fortunately unsuccessfully, but the Biden administration has been trying to weaken American law, and in ways that would give the Chinese the ability to take our stuff legally. Now, fortunately, we have seen companies with valuable technology, especially in the standard setting area, fight back. But this is a struggle because this was also something we saw in the Obama era as well. So in the technology, and matter of fact, all stuff covered by patents, this is critical to America's future. I mean, that's our economy, and without our economy, we don't have anything else.
So patent law in America is sort of the motivation for creation of products and even services, yes?
Oh, absolutely, because inventors want to be able to exploit their inventions, and they really can't unless they've got strong patent protection. And this goes back to the Constitution.
Yes.
Patents were mentioned. And I think that showed that the Founding Fathers understood that we needed to have an innovative society, even back then. You know, since then, of course, there's been all sorts of, people talk about technological revolutions, but it really would not have been possible unless patents were protected from the get-go.
And I wonder if you can sort of put this in context. America has strong patent laws or protections for the most part. How does America compare to other nations?
Well, we compare to other nations well because we have not only patent laws, but we've got the court system and the infrastructure and the rule of law to protect them. A lot of countries in China, you can go there and you can look at their laws and you can say, gee, That's not bad. But the point is that patent protection is not available as a practical matter because there is no rule of law. The courts don't enforce things fairly. This is all because of the Communist Party has a top-down system, and whatever the party demands is what courts are going to enforce. So it is a very different system. You just can't compare the laws. You have to compare actual patent protection. And in the United States, it's good. It needs to be better, but it is good, and at least we have a history of doing this. China in the communist era certainly does not.
Okay, I want to get into the perils from China. You made a appearance in this new film called Innovation Race, where you talk about this issue, the importance of patent protections. And you made this comment in the trailer where you say, those who dominate technology dominate the economy. Those who dominate the economy dominate the world. And here's my question in regards to China. China does not have constitutional issues to worry about when they gather the data they need to advance their technology. So how concerned are you that America can really beat China when it comes to technology?
Well, data is especially relevant to artificial intelligence because AI runs on two things. Of course, it runs on the technology, but it also runs on the amount of data that is fed into AI systems. And the more data you put in, the better it is, the smarter it is.
Right.
Now, China has no protections, and there are no restrictions on the data that can be fed into their AI systems. We're a democracy, so American people want their privacy protected, and that's a good thing, by the way, which means that our AI technology has got to be really, really good to offset China's built-in advantage.
And can we? That's the question. Are you optimistic on that?
I think that we can. China has done a lot in terms of AI technology, so one can make the case that they're ahead. If they are, it's not by far. But the point is we're a much more innovative society. So when you look at what's going to happen in the future, I think that we can outpace China. There are a lot of issues that go into that, and one of them is the Chinese economy, which right now is in a very distressed state. And that, of course, affects their ability to pay for the research and all the other things that go into innovation. So I think that we will prevail, but we just can't get complacent about it because, we do have many people in this country who don't want patent protections, who are politically powerful. And so this is going to be a constant struggle.
So when you say China's in a distressed economy right now, first off, we don't hear enough about that in American media. And second off, does that mean that China is not the threat to America that has become normal to broadcast these days in the news?
Well, China's economy is in trouble. They say that it's growing. They've actually reported 3.9% growth in the third quarter year on year. But I don't think that China is growing at nearly that pace, if at all. And I think that China overall this year probably will contract when we look at underlying data. But there's a couple other things we know. Even according to official numbers, their property prices are plunging. We can see this with the debt defaults of the major property developers, also the so-called mortgage boycotts, Chinese people not paying their mortgages, and the bank runs. You got not only that, but a plunging currency and many other problems. So China's society is beset by simultaneous crises. But that doesn't make them benign. That actually, I believe, makes them more dangerous because it gives Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, a reason to lash out because he can see a closing window of opportunity. He realizes that if he wants to accomplish what he believes are historic Chinese goals, he's got to move sooner rather than later. And I think he has a low threshold of risk because of internal Chinese Communist Party politics. I think China's never been more dangerous than it is now, even though I think China is a weak state.
And how much does the fact that we have a president, a commander in chief, who is definitely on the side of pro-China, embracing China, sometimes even to the point of embracing China over American principles, how much do you see that is playing into the rush of China right now to become leader on the global stage?
I believe that Biden's actions on China, which are, even when they move in the right direction, are inadequate. I think that his whole China posture emboldens Xi Jinping, and he realizes that President Biden's not going to be around for maybe, this is 2 years at the most. So that gives Xi Jinping a time frame in which to act. We have seen Chinese propaganda talk about the failures of the Biden administration, and that reinforces the general notion that the Chinese have had for a half-decade, or even longer, that the United States is in terminal decline and is in no position to stand up to China. So these are dangerous attitudes to start out with. I believe that they are wrong, fundamentally wrong, but nonetheless, it doesn't matter what is true. It matters what the Chinese themselves actually think. And when they see feeble actions on the part of the Biden administration, that just reinforces these wrong notions that they have about the trajectory of China and the trajectory of the United States.
Yeah, if I'm China right now, I'm thinking, well, I've got maybe 2 more years in order to invade Taiwan. Is that something that you see as actually occurring?
I think that could certainly occur, and it could occur a lot sooner than most American leaders think. We heard the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Mike Gilday, last week talk about how China, he couldn't rule out a Chinese invasion this year. And that's important because at the top levels of the Pentagon, both the Defense Secretary, civilian officials, and the 3 and 4 stars, there's been a noticeable lack of sense of urgency. And even Admiral Gilday's comments, when you look at the specific things that he's proposing, do betray that lack of sense of urgency. One thing we know, Cheryl, and that is that China's engaged in the most rapid military buildup since the Second World War, and even more ominously, Xi Jinping has picked what's called a war cabinet, and he's mobilizing China's civilians for war. So I don't look at this as a question of what will happen. I look at the question of China's capabilities and what they are saying and doing. And that says to me that we need to be prepared as well. I don't know what's in Xi Jinping's mind. Only he does. And even if he were to tell us what's on his mind, he might not say the truth. But we can see what he's doing. And we have to match his preparations with our preparations.
And yet we're not, because as you point out, as China's building up and bolstering their military, America's military is in, for the first time in history, as Heritage Foundation just reported, in a very weakened state, aside from the Marines. So talk about that. Talk about the dangers to America because of this dual whammy going on. China's buildup, America's decline regarding military.
The Air Force is very weak and the Navy is weak. And that corresponds with what we have seen over the last couple years. And that is, first of all, wrong-headed policies, which undermine unit cohesion, which is absolutely critical in the war. But also we have seen the Biden administration cancel weapons that are absolutely necessary, like nuclear-tipped cruise missiles. We don't have tactical nuclear weapons that are effective for deterring Russia's and China's use of tactical nukes. Our tactical nuclear weapons are old, outdated, and are gravity-delivered bombs, which are not much of a weapon, considering the nature of warfare these days. But also we have seen a decrease in spending. Part of the Pentagon's problem is that they need more money, but the bigger part of the problem is that a terrible wastage of money, building the wrong types of weapons that don't work, is a fundamental problem inside the Pentagon right now, which is aggravated by the disadvantageous policies of the Biden administration.
You know, what's almost worse to me than just the military vulnerabilities that America is facing when compared to China is the seepage of the cultural Marxism straight out of China's communist playbook into American society. Which danger do you see is having longer term repercussions for America?
I do worry about the wokeness, as it's called, but we know that Beijing has been promoting critical race theory, trying to divide Americans. And we got to remember that one of the first things that President Biden did, as soon as taking the oath of office, on January 2021, was to issue his executive order on xenophobia, which could have been written by Beijing. So, I can't say that Beijing told Biden to issue that executive order. I don't think they did, but they might as well have, because the effect is the same.
You know, Republicans haven't exactly been the saviors here when it comes to China. What has been the most discomforting failures of Republicans in Congress and even in the White House, depending on how far back you want to go, when it comes to China policy?
That takes about an hour and a half.
Okay.
Because one of the things is that, as you point out, some of the most pro-China views are not liberal Democrats, but are conservative Republicans.
Yeah.
And it's not like they say things to help China, but the things that they believe, in fact, help China. So, for instance, you have a number of Republicans who believe in free trade. Now, free trade is great, but they translate that into not imposing costs on China for serious violations of its trade obligations and of its outright criminality when it comes to trade. And so those are positions that Beijing would very, very much likes. This is a problem in both political parties, as you point out, and it's a problem that goes across the political spectrum from liberals to conservatives. There's just been a failure to understand the danger, and there's been a failure to understand the practical consequences of beliefs that people fervently hold. I believe that right now the United States is under attack. The Chinese are conducting what they consider to be warfare against us. Americans are dying of COVID-19 and fentanyl, and there is an inadequate appreciation of that in Washington right now. And no party, no political belief has a monopoly on getting it right.
I have two other questions. Do you have time?
Sure, of course.
So did Donald Trump have it right on China with his rhetoric and his actions?
President Trump did something which was critically important, and that is he broke 5 decades of engagement theory of China, where American presidents, especially Nixon, George H.W. Bush, and Clinton, felt it was in the interest of the United States to support the Chinese Communist Party, and in fact did things that rescued the Communist Party. So Trump broke that engagement theory and started talking about how American policy should benefit Americans. Some of the things that Trump did, I thought, were not especially helpful, especially his Phase 1 trade deal, and also his response to COVID. One can say that Trump, of course, was democratically elected, and there's only so far he could have moved because he did have a responsibility to reflect the views of the American people, and the views of the American people at that time were not where they had to be. But I think history will say that Trump got it mostly right on China, and that if he had a second consecutive term, he would have done things which were truly historic.
Just a quick follow-up to what you said. So what should he have done better on COVID?
First of all, he should have, at the time, called out that the Chinese Communist Party had deliberately spread COVID beyond its borders. We don't know, Cheryl, where SARS-CoV-2, the pathogen that causes COVID-19, came from. I believe it came from the lab, but we don't have 100% assurance on that. But we did have 100% assurance on one thing, and that Trump should have known, and that is for weeks the Chinese lied about contagiousness. They knew it was highly transmissible human to human, but they told the United States and the world it was not. And at the same time that they were locking down their own country, they were pressuring the United States and others to take arrivals from China without travel restrictions or quarantines. And those two things show that Xi Jinping, once this disease got out beyond China's borders, deliberately spread it to the world. That's, as of today, 1,070,000 or so Americans who have been killed by a disease that should have never touched our shores. President Trump had the information to conclude that this was malicious spread. He didn't talk about it then. He talks about it now, but not then. And at that time, remember, he signed up the Phase 1 trade deal. It was good that he imposed the tariffs on China. That was an historic achievement. But then he didn't carry it through as he should have.
And just to wrap up with this last question, hopefully to end on a little more optimistic note, I don't know, you'll tell me, what is the playbook America should take right now in order to beat China and tie in the importance of patent protections as you spell out in your appearance in Innovation Race?
The most important thing is that the American people have to understand that we're under attack and that China intends to destroy our country. And that conclusion leads then to a number of policy prescriptions, which is severing trade, severing investment, not permitting technology transfers, and certainly not funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology, as we have seen recently. In terms of patents, we should vigorously enforce patents, and it should not just be patent owners. They should be getting the help of the federal government to do this. And when China violates patents, the federal government should be imposing severe costs through executive orders, through congressional action on China. So the federal government should come to the rescue of patent holders whenever violations occur. And unfortunately, they occur all the time. They're significant, and they're taking American technology despite our patent system.
And you know what? I got to say, there is a little bit of optimistic in the trailer that I saw of Innovation Race. There were both Democrats and Republicans who were represented as talking about the importance of maintaining strong patent laws in America. So that is a good sign of partnering together between the parties on the horizon.
Yes, and I think that this is reality starting to infect the political system, which doesn't happen that often, Cheryl.
Yeah.
It is happening now. And so I think that we're starting to have a better appreciation of the importance of patents after several administrations allowing patent protections to sort of to not enforce them in the way that they should have been, and not to propose policies to protect the rights of patent owners. So the pendulum is swinging back to a better place.
Finally, some good news. And, you know, thanks be to you on that, too, because you are a wealth of crucial information on all things China. So thank you, Gordon Chang, for what you do. And thank you for speaking with me on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate it, Cheryl, because the issues you're talking about are so critical to our future.
I agree. Thank you. Oh, for a fast forward button to move through these next 2 years under Joe Biden, if only, right? If you want to check out the film that Gordon Chang has just made an appearance in, go to innovationracemovie.com. There's a trailer there you can see, but it opens in theaters around the nation on November 16th. So go ahead and see it in a theater, but check it out first online. I want to thank you for listening. I appreciate your support. You can get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, the online platform for faith-based podcasts, at washingtontimes.com, or wherever podcasts are offered. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.